Ask the Podcast Coach for February 3rd, 2018.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Just in time, the one and only Rob Greenlee is joining us. Welcome to Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. And joining me over there, what a guy. He's worked everywhere. Microsoft, Podcast One, Hall of Fame podcaster, working at Spreaker. Today he's going to help us understand what the heck is a Vox Nest. And I got to make sure. Yes, I should be able to hear you, Rob. Let me turn you up more. I don't hear you yet, which could be me. That's the fun part of this. If you say something now? Still no Rob. But we are at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. If you want to join in, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join. Okay, good. You guys can't hear him either. If you would like to call in, I believe it is Lord Hambag is the phone number, better known as 567-342-6224. I have the phone plugged in, and that's going to be the fun one. I cannot, I'm sure there's a way you can do this with your iPad or your iPhone in this case, and that is figure out how to get the screen to stay on, because I have the phone somewhat turned up. I found out a couple weeks ago where when I have the phone plugged in and I get a lot of notifications, hey, that makes it into the recording. And that's not the least bit annoying. And so I have the phone up, but not too much. And so that means if I'm not watching the phone and I don't see the little thing come up saying you have a call, I think, and that's the other thing I need to figure out. I'm using good old Magic Jack. Remember Magic Jack when it was a big deal to get a second phone line? I think you get a whole 2 rings before it goes to voicemail. So if I'm not like watching it all the time, that could be a problem. So how is the new mixer working out? Well, as you can tell, I'm still kind of like, I think this is going to do that. It's got a lot of channels. It's got a lot of buttons. Most of them are muted at this point. And I was working with PreSonus this week, and I said, hey, on the recording, and it's this much. If you could put your fingers up, just it's that much of this high pitch, like nee, that you can just barely hear on the recording. And they said, what did you format the SD card as? And I'm like, formatted it the way right click format. So I dug into that. It turns out I was formatting it as FAT32, which previously it was formatted as, you guessed it, FAT32, which I think is a rapper, if I remember right. Yo, it's FAT32. And Rob is back, probably going, what's Steve talking about? There he is, and we can hear him this time.
You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Which is a good thing. Let me get my camera working here. It was a little bit tough here to get going here. I had to reboot my computer, and it's still not going. Shoot.
I hate that. I know when I reboot my computer, it wonks the camera settings, and I look like a Smurf. Everything is very blue in my camera, and I always have to go in and adjust those, and that's always fun.
Okay.
But there he is.
Yep.
And so I got this new mixer, Rob. It's got like everything you want. Basically, it's a PreSonus Studio Live AR12, and what I like about it is it has sliders instead of knobs. It has insert jacks if you have outside processing. It's got not 1 but 2 auxiliary sends plus effects. Although, unless I want to sound cheesy and have I have it turned off. I could have cheesy reverb. Yeah,
reverb. Yes,
because we all need more reverb. Yeah, that's helpful.
Adds a lot to the depth of the program.
And so I bought it, and I had this like this much of a signal, but it was this high pitch, and it wasn't. I didn't even notice it until the actual sound file quit, and I was like, wait a minute, what was that? And all I did was reformat my SD card, and it seems to have fixed it. Oh. The other thing that I'm hoping doesn't happen today And I also upgraded my driver because I was just about ready to box it up and send it back. Is every now and then it would just quit, like, because you're using it as a sound card, and all of a sudden, and whatever video I was watching, all of a sudden everybody just froze, and I was like, up, you can test this on a PC. You have that little speaker in the bottom right hand corner. If you adjust the volume, anytime you do that on a PC, it always goes ding to let you know that it's, you've adjusted your volume.
Yes.
And when I did that and nothing happened, I'm like, it's the thing. So I have since updated my driver, and so far a day and a half, it's working okay. But yeah, Grob is here from Spreaker and Hall of Fame podcaster, and he's been podcasting before there was podcasting, actually. The chat room asked, where's Jim? Jim is doing that thing with high school students, and what's really cool about this is he's bringing them in, and they're I forget exactly what he's teaching them. I think it's coding or something of that nature. But this is something where this program didn't exist before. He works at Gallup. He brings them in, and they literally like walk out with like skill. Like, okay, cool. Like, you're kind of set to go to college, but you also have a skill that's actually usable. And so he used to try to do both. He would literally like run down the hall, do Ask the Podcast Coach, and run back, but his program's been getting bigger and bigger, and so he's just like, look, I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks, which is cool because then I get to have cool people like you show up. So
it's great to be here, Dave. Yeah.
And you announced yesterday on Facebook, and I'd already kind of heard this through the grapevine, this lovely new thing called VoxNest, which you can find at voxnest.com. And I've taken the Larry King approach to this. I don't have a clue about what it is. I saw where you talked about it on the Spreaker live show, and I got about 4 minutes into that and was like, you know what? I'm just going to let Rob explain it to me. So with that, I give you the floor.
Well, Dave, I always thought Larry King knew what he was talking about. So
I always loved when, I think it was Seinfeld, that he'd never seen an episode.
I got a chance to meet him a couple of times when I was working down in Los Angeles. So I've shaken Larry King's hand before. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. So what is we're having a bit of a delay issue. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. That's good to know. So if I understand this right, VoxNest is now the parent company of Spreaker and Blog Talk Radio?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It's just instead of kind of shutting down any of the other websites or whatever that have a lot of customers, a lot of people using them to do shows, we figured we would just layer on a new company on top of it that basically would enable us to build really a professional podcast publishing monetization engine that would sit on top of the two companies, and then just leave the other two companies alone and just let them do what they do and keep improving them and keep working on them. So we basically have three companies that are part of this, and this mix of features and functions and catering to different markets, right? So there's three products basically that are inside of VoxNest that are unique.
Let me interrupt you because according to the chat room, you are very, and I'm hearing it too, you're very staticky. You almost sound robotic. So I don't know if you need to switch your microphone. This is good. We're doing all the troubleshooting, so Todd doesn't have to. You'll be all set for the
yeah, I can see there's something weird going on. That's for sure.
So it might be a case where you need to pop back out and pop back in. Let me do that. So go ahead and keep talking. I will keep on keeping on. Yes. So
all right. Awesome.
I appreciate the effort.
Yeah.
So welcome to live podcasting. I have a lot of people that want to do live, and I'm always like, are you sure? Sure you want to do that? But right. It does work.
Okay.
It's fun interaction. But let's see here if you're any better.
Let's see here. Let me try it again here.
And if I did have somebody, we might talk about this today. You know what I'm going to do? Let's do this. While Rob is troubleshooting, I'm going to take a second to thank my awesome supporters. There you go. There's something we can talk about. So at the $20 level, Max Trescott from aviationnewstalk.com, Josh Rivers at podcastingexperiments.com, Glenn the Geek Hebert at horseradionetwork.com, Jonathan Bloom at weeklyawesome.com. I love that domain, as well as Shane from spybrary.com. So if you're into spies, check that out. At the $10 level, Frank Miller, Frank, I still need your website, J. Cleveland Payne at jclevelandpayne.net, Sean at beerownerd.com, the one only Nick Suberling from CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com, Barry Kessler from BarryKessler.com. Barry was on last week. Dale Henninger and Jeff Hallish, which you can find Jeff at Podnuts. Nuts is NUTZ.com, which is a computer repair thing. Michael Ray, Rob Griffiths from bedtime.fm, Doug Salamone from becominglimitless.org, Darren Dake from cornertalk.com, Jim Cullison, you may have heard of him from theaverageguy.tv, Joe Taylor on faithedge.com, Troy Heinrichs, the one and only from blacklistexposed.com, Mark W. King, who does distilling ventured capital at markwking.com, Cauldron's Crypt from cauldronscript.com, Cale Nelson from Ham Radio 360, Tim Slusher from distractivelifepodcast.com, Jeremy Dennis from the Transmissions Podcast at transmissionspodcast.com, Corey Finneran from ivnv.com, Jason Curtis from cuatx.com, which is all about events. At the $1 level, thank you to, let's see here now. Oh, here we go. creepykingdom.com. There's a person named Mask Me. I really would love your domain name for that. Paul at fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk, which is dedicated to basically World War I and II. Felix Montalara, and I'm going to guess, Felix, you are the guy behind the Latin Podcast Awards. I was trying to put these together this morning. Mike Moody from MrRobotPodcast.com, Jeffrey from genealogyshowcase.com, Garrett Godfrey, not that Godfrey, is the crowdfunding christianmusic.com, Slept in Government Class, you can find that at sleptinclass.com, Barb from anchor.fm/BarbTUSA, Alan Palmer, Emily, the one and only Emily from the Story Behind Podcast. She's back, by the way, if you're not listening to that show. Gary from kiwimana.co.nz, Dave Wilson from Ottawa Works, the Seahawkers Podcast.com, Craig from, we're almost done, Rob. Craig from IngleasPodcast.com, Josh Liston from tpsguy.org, the North Omaha History Podcast, which is also Steve Sleeper at earn.show, Cody Sison, Lucas Apps at Triangle, I got to get this right, TriangleTactical.net. There we go. TriangleTactical.net. And I think I got everybody else. Paul Scheel, which is actually I already mentioned him, fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk. Thank you for being an awesome supporter. I do that at the beginning of the month, so it's always giant list. And I'm like, hey, we got to fill time. Let's do the giant list. So, and I really do thank everybody for going out to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. So you sound much better, Rob.
Oh, really? Okay. You've heard me so far. Okay.
Yeah. So you were saying that it's a parent company above Spreaker and Blog Talk. So that's the good news.
Yeah. So there's like three functions that are inside of VoxNest that are new and unique. One is called Dynamo, which is basically a ad insertion monetization process that you can add to any podcast. So no matter where it's hosted, you can have dynamic ad insertion added to your podcast, and you can make money off of your show with pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll ad insertions. So you can do that. It's all free. If you go to the site, you can sign up for that and get a 60-40 revenue share on that. And you don't have to really do anything. It's all automatic. I go through and select the categories of ads that you're willing to accept on your program. And that's pretty much all there is to it. There's a little prefix code that you have to generate in the website and then add to your host platform. So you're basically redirecting the download traffic over to VoxNest. so we can do the ad insertion part of it. But that's how that product works.
Well, how does that? Because I know you said you can do this from any platform.
Yes.
So I understand, and most of them do. Podbean, I know Libsyn does a prefix.
Yeah.
So it sends it to you.
Yep.
Does the, let's say I'm hosting on Libsyn, does that file then just sit there and do nothing, or is it somehow injecting the file and then putting it on the Libsyn site? That's
yeah.
The part
So
I'm confused.
Yeah, so you publish like you normally would. It goes into your RSS feed, and then we pick it up on our side, and then we redistribute that file off of Voxnest. So we're basically a CDN is what we are, that's doing the dynamic ad insertion. And so you added a prefix to that basically redirects that traffic through the Voxnest servers. So that's kind of in a nutshell how it works.
Yeah. So basically I pointed at you, you make the file, stitch in the ads, and then
it's delivered through that actual feed, the same feed that you've been using. It's really a platform that really only works with kind of like archive shows. So you have to think about it in that way. And so it's a way to monetize, so let's say you do a show and you publish it, it goes out to your RSS feed, and then you go into the Voxnest platform and set your ad insertion points in that show, and then it goes out with the ad insertions in it.
Got it. And then we're gonna pretend that that's not getting wonky. Your audio is getting, and I don't think it's you. I think it's YouTube today. We'll see.
Okay.
Does this mess with your stats then?
The stats do currently transfer over to Voxnest. Yeah. Okay. So your numbers would be available over there. So if you're using, it depends on the platform. I would think it's really new, and we're not exactly sure all the dynamics that happens on all of the other platforms. Like so if you did this with a Spreaker podcast right now, all the plays that happen on Spreaker are not going to have the prefix on it. So you're still going to, so there's a little bit of wonkiness that's going on. And I'm not sure every platform kind of has their own kind of unique mix on what they're doing. So, so this is mainly going to work with your RSS feed and your downloads. So,
okay. And yeah, you are officially now, your sound is officially
gone.
It's not gone. You sound almost like you're going, it's you're just lots of static, and it's like,
oh, that's weird. What is going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's a go out and come back in thing again, or
I suppose, maybe. Yeah, I've noticed that it happens a lot with Hangouts. So yeah. I'm not sure.
What do you, is that what you and Todd, or no, you and Todd are using Skype, and then he broadcasts Skype over his.
Yeah, I don't have any of this issues with Skype.
Yeah.
It's with Hangouts I occasionally have this issue.
Well, I'm not going to not pay them anymore. That's all there is to it. The joys of free.
Let me try one.
Okay, now we can't hear you.
Okay.
And now you're back.
Okay, does that help at all?
Yeah, it does. Okay.
I think it is Hangouts, because I made a switch in the drivers in Hangouts, and then came back into it again, and it works now. So
that's always fun.
It's meanwhile, back at
the ranch.
Yes.
So yeah, so you were saying, so if somebody's using, so the redirect sends the over to Dynamo. Mm-hmm. Dynamo inserts all the ads, and then basically the stats are going to be tracked on Dynamo. It's not going to show up in your regular hosting dashboard, because so in a way, you then the media host then, basically?
Yeah, as far as for your download via your RSS feed, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay.
But I think down the line, I mean, our plan is, and I've been pushing the team to do this too, is to get a reporting API going back to the primary host.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a way that we can mitigate this issue, so stats can live in both places. Because I think that's really important. It's just not something that we had at launch.
Right.
So I think that capability is going to be really important as you look to the future. And then the other product that we have is called Hive, and it hasn't launched yet either. And it's basically a professional hosting kind of platform. It's kind of our Lipson Pro, basically, in some ways. So that's going to launch in the next coming couple months. And then the last piece is called Cortex, and it's basically an ad targeting capability that's built into the platform that will really be it's really focused on driving the needs of the advertiser. So we'll be able to do a better job of targeting ads to listeners based on what the advertisers are looking for. So it's a little bit of machine intelligence. It's a little bit of kind of data mining, trying to make ads more targeted to listeners. So that's the idea behind it.
And are these your typical Home Depot, Progressive Insurance, big name kind of ads that we've kind of been seeing on other networks?
Yeah, I mean, right now that's what we're supporting is working with the ad networks out there that are doing typically 15 to 30 second ads, and more these ads are becoming more like host reads. They're being produced more like host reads all the time. Now, granted, some of them probably sound like a Geico ad or something like that. That are aired. They're typically shorter because this medium is recognized as something that needs to be shorter. So my recommendation is, since the tool is capable of selecting locations for ad insertions, that you do like maybe a early mid-roll and then a couple of mid-roll positions. It supports pre-roll and post-roll and mid-roll, and you can actually select the insertion points in a waveform, basically, for each of your episodes.
And unfortunately, your sound has gone wonky again.
Well, so that's helpful.
It's like, well, nice we can understand you, but it's like it's really
painful.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I can swear I'll be doing some editing in this episode.
Oh, is that any different right here?
No, still kind of the.
That's weird. It's Hangouts, man.
It is.
Darn
and
Hangouts.
It's weird because about the time you go, oh, Hangouts is great. We don't have any problems with it. That's when it's like, no, it's on occasion
having problems.
Yeah, we haven't had problems in a while, so we were due. So, well, it is. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's solid as a rock, and then no, it's not.
Okay. So is that better again?
Yeah, I don't know what you're doing, but
I changed in the settings in Hangouts.
Yeah, just a matter of changing back, I guess. So
exactly.
Yeah, which of course makes no sense. What else? Let's see. So you have Cortex, you have Hive, which is that's not available yet. And then Dynamo is the ad insertion.
And nothing is going to change to Spreaker or Blog Talk Radio. They're all going to keep. I mean, there's going to be changes to Spreaker. I mean, those features that we're adding to Dynamo and that VoxNest kind of nest of products is going to trickle down into Spreaker too. So there's going to be a lot of the capabilities that are going to be down there, like pre and mid-roll and post-roll insertions will be available in Spreaker as well. Because right now it supports pre and post-rolls, but it doesn't support mid-rolls. And then some other more advanced features will trickle there down as we build them for Hive and Dynamo. So there's going to be improvements.
Can somebody just have a mid-roll, or do they have to have like all three?
They can have a mid-roll, just a mid-roll. Yes.
Because I know some people really, I don't know why. I mean, advertisers love them, but they don't like pre-rolls. Yeah, they're like, I want my voice to be the first thing. And
I'm not a big fan of pre-rolls either. I think ideally you should have some content at the beginning of your show, not an ad. So that's just my own personal thought.
Well, that's me, my own personal. I'm like, I don't really want to hear. And depending, especially on some of the ads, they're like, okay. Well, like you said, the good news is most of them are pretty short. It's about the time I've dug my phone out of my pocket to hit skip, it's over. So that's the good news. And you said the split was 60-40. Is that correct? On Dynamo?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Good. So, if you have Spreaker, like let's say you're using Spreaker, you already have ads in them. Should you turn that off on Spreaker and start using Dynamo? Because I'm assuming using both is going to be like, it's just going to confuse things.
Yeah. I mean, for now, I think, the team's been talking a lot about this. And I think over time we'll figure out a way to be able to enable both, because what happens, and I'm not, so once you enable Dynamo and you turn off the ones on Spreaker, you're basically not getting any ads at all on Spreaker. So that's essentially what was happening on that. So yeah, currently it's a decision between the two.
And I know with Spreaker, I think there was a minimum payout of, I think $10. What's the minimum payout on Dynamo?
I don't know that number. Let's say I honestly, I don't know what the minimum payout is. That I haven't discussed it.
It's new. I know.
So I think it's probably the same as what we were doing with Spreaker, I would imagine.
Yeah, because otherwise you end up with I don't know. You don't want to make here's your 38 cents or whatever, because you've just started and it's the end of the month or something.
Well, it's going to be payouts are going to happen through PayPal, so it should be fairly flexible on that. Yeah. It's not like we're sending out checks or something like that.
Right. So. But that's cool. Anything else we should know about the new stuff?
Well, I think that the big message is that the company is new. So when you see us at conferences and trade shows, you're going to primarily see us as Fox Nest. But we're going to have the same kind of information about Spreaker and things like that there too. So we're going to be kind of like two combined companies when you see us out there at events. So I'm still going to be working pretty aggressively on the Spreaker side, as well as on the VoxNest side, because it's kind of catering to a little bit of two different markets. There's a little bit of crossover between the two, but one is catering more towards the higher end podcaster market, and then Spreaker is catering more towards who Spreaker's been all these years. So and both are a priority to me, and both are really important to the company going forward.
Yeah. Your sound is being very bizarre. It literally went bad and then fixed itself. So,
is it bad now again?
Yeah, it's right on the edge. So that's always interesting. Chat room, if you have any questions, we're at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. If you want to jump in with me and Rob, or Rob and I'm not sure what the proper grammar of that is, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join. Or if you'd like to call in, the number is 567-342-6224. If you have any questions for Rob or myself, feel free to join on in.
Dave, I'm back, I think. Do I sound okay now?
You sound great. Okay. So for anybody who's looking at Hive, and they're like, "Ooh, that sounds interesting." Any idea when that's going to launch?
I would say in the next, probably within the next 2 months.
Okay. So
probably around springtime, in that time frame. It's what we're shooting for right now.
And so at PodFest, do I get to get a VoxNest shirt, or is it
you do? I actually came up with a whole new VoxNest, design. It's going to be a surprise. I haven't, sent a picture out on Twitter yet of what our t-shirts are going to look like, but maybe that's something I'll do, before I leave to go to Florida. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I have a Spreaker shirt. I have my whole closet is nothing but podcasting shirts.
I know. I have one too. I got one from Zune right here.
Oh, now we're talking. That's a classic right there. Holy cow!
Yeah, I have like a yo-yo. I have a Zune yo-yo and a Zune frisbee and a Zune Rubik's cube. So I should bring those out sometime.
Well, I would just hold on, and then another 5-10 years, those will be, throw those things on eBay and put your kid to college or something.
That's right.
I always loved when the Zune came out and it had the wood paneling.
Was that awesome?
I was like, because I wanted a player that had the prestige and coolness of an old 70s station wagon. I never quite got that. It was definitely unique.
I mean, Dave, I mean, it's thinking differently, right?
That's it.
That's what Zune was all about, was thinking differently.
Yeah. It actually was a cool little player, and I liked the software, and you were working hard on the directory behind the scenes. So, oh my goodness, there it is.
There it is there. Yeah. Say, there you go, there. Those were the mantras there.
Innovation, customer centricity, excellence, and honesty. Well, there you go.
There you go.
Who's the cool guy with the shades? Just some model of some sort?
Probably, yeah. It was. This is basically a brand guidelines book for Zune. So, yeah. I mean, it was very, very. If you think about it, I mean, I go back. I mean, it was very.
And you've gone wonky again, just for the record.
Just for the record.
So the good news is it only takes like 2 seconds to fix.
It does.
It's like go to here and click there and come back.
See, I'm back.
Yeah, but you're still wonky this time.
What?
Yeah. Now I can't hear you at all. Wait, now you're muted. And there we go. Now he's back and you sound fine.
Oh, jeez. Hey, the suspense is killing me on this one. I mean, anyway.
Well, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I see this a lot in Facebook, and I would love to just hear your opinion on this. The person that said this, I have a very important question. And he even says, for me anyway, says, I'm launching my first podcast on Monday, February 19th. I just got everything down, the format, the gear, some practicing. I've got my hosting site picked, already have my own website. However, I know you have to submit to iTunes among other for the first time, and that takes time to be approved. What can I do, if anything, so that the first podcast is available that day, of course, February 19th for Apple? That's critically important because I have a very well-known guest in the field, and his endorsement tweet that day, if available on iTunes that day, could get me a bunch of early subscribers. Should I do a 1 to 2 practice episodes and submit those to iTunes a week beforehand? If I were to do that, I definitely, in all caps, want them deleted when I submit my first real podcast on February 19th. I definitely want the episode with this famous person to be episode number 1, not whatever stuff I send to iTunes ahead of that to get it initially approved. So I see this a lot with I'm doing my launch.
Yes.
So
yes.
What are your thoughts on the podcast launch?
Well, that's a very complex question, but as far as how to launch with iTunes, I would just do like a teaser episode, like a 30-second promo. Get your show in iTunes, and if you want to take that teaser down, take it down, and then just publish your first episode after you've gotten your distribution established. I mean, I make this recommendation to any podcast that's starting, is just get your distribution before you start making your full episodes, right? I mean, you have to get at least one episode in there in order to get your RSS feed and get it out there and get it distribution. So
yeah, that's I'm with you. I'm like, send something out there to make sure that it works, because that's the worst thing. You don't want to find out that after you submit it that you forgot to put in your categories or something like that. Yeah. And then to me, I'm always like, if you wanted to, you could put that first episode out. Yeah. Because to me, I don't really think being in iTunes, like let's say you had the real episode there on the 17th. Yeah. I don't know that's going to get a ton of downloads unless you really tell people. I think that the big launch is telling your friends and family and your cousins and uncles and everybody else that, hey, I'm actually available on Apple.
Yeah, but I've seen it happen many, many times with shows that I've helped launch. Is getting that promo episode out there allows you to kind of do some pre-marketing for your show, kind of share it with friends and family. Say, go subscribe. It's in iTunes, and then my first episode comes out on this date. And I've seen that the numbers on the preview typically are fairly high. And then when the episode comes out, then you already have some subscribers that are built in, and it's not going to be a kind of a wasted episode. Because oftentimes what happens, that first episode is a little bit of a waste, right? I mean, nobody's really going to listen to it because you don't have your distribution yet. So it's just a way to kind of jumpstart the process. It's going to work better for some than others, depending on what they do and how they market and promote their show.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to say now, right?
I do.
Yeah, it's so he's already changing.
It's like
yeah, it's always fun. Let's see. I had a couple other questions here. Oh, I don't know if I didn't know this was going on. I just happened to be on Facebook. Podcamptoronto.com. And I actually had to do some Google searching to find out that you don't need a passport. I thought you needed a passport now to go into Canada. And at least according to Uncle Google, you don't if you're coming from the US.
I wouldn't try it.
No, see, that's what it said. It said bring a birth certificate. I'm like, because I thought you had to have a passport. I thought that was.
I think so now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's happening February 23rd through the 25th, and they're now having an award ceremony. So if you go to awards.podcamptoronto.com, because that's only 5 hours away from me, but I was like, I need a passport, and those are, I don't know how long it takes to get one. I know if you like get the hurry up plan, they're not cheap, but I need to get a new passport. So I was like, but that'd be crazy because I basically drive to Canada, come back, unpack, do laundry, and then pack and go to San Diego for social media marketing. But I know you're going to be at Podfest. Are you going to be at Social Media Marketing World?
No, I'm not.
That's I've never been to that. I've heard a lot about that event, so I'm excited.
I've never been either. Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of Canada, there is a podcasting conference happening up in Canada on May 5th called Pod Summit.
Did you go to that last year?
I did.
How was it?
I was a speaker at that one, and Ray Ortega did a video speaking gig there. It was great. It's a fairly small event still. It's probably 100 people or so, but
I like those sometimes. The little intimate gatherings.
Yeah, fantastic, actually.
We have a question from the chat room. What are the biggest challenges with interviewing on site, not in your audio booth? Well, first of all, when it's on site, that's the good news is everybody's there. The bad news is everybody's there. Rob, you've done a lot of recording at events. How do you do it?
Well, you have to have a certain kind of microphone that actually doesn't pick up a lot of ambient and background sounds like a dynamic microphone. I mean, a microphone like this one does pretty good job with it. The ATR 2100s do a really good job. So it's just a matter of having good microphones. You don't want to bring a condenser to a conference or an event, or lots of different recording rooms you can get into can be really echoey and really sound bad. But you just have to be careful, if you do that, and pick a good spot that's got good acoustics, and be sure that you have a good microphone that's designed for portable audio recording.
Yeah, I did. I remember I've been at a couple events where you'll find somebody, you're in a noisy room, and you're like, hey, can we get like 10 minutes? I'd love to interview you for just a little bit of time. You go in a room, and it's literally, there's empty tables and there's nothing there. It's just this big empty room. So you go from noisy room to a room that just sounds, it's nothing but reverb. And so
but that's a good thing, Dave, right? I mean, these hardware manufacturers are building reverb into their devices. It must be something that we're supposed to play in our shows.
Exactly. Because everybody wants to sound like this. And it's, so that's no fun. But E says, I'll be putting up info on podcast conferences on my website. Well, that's cool. On the ones I should definitely have on my resources page. Well, I think the biggies, there's Podcast Movement. There's Podfest, which is happening next weekend. There's Podcast Mid-Atlantic. What am I missing, Rob? Any other ones?
The National Association of Broadcasters is going to be putting on a huge deal around podcasting this year at the NAB show down in Las Vegas. This in April. So that's going to be a big podcasting event this year. There's going to be a whole bunch of tracks around podcasting. The NAB is this year, I was told on the phone this week, is going to be catering to podcasters, not broadcasters.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Especially with Who's the one company? Is it that just they want? Is it Scripps that wants to sell off all their radio stations?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Scripps.
Yeah. And I know there's one, I cannot find it. I'll have to ask him. Dave Hooper did a conference last year. It was a 1-day event. He's going to do it again. It's in April. And previously it was at bigpodcast.com, and it's not there anymore. It's something with the word pod in it. It's like Podlicious or Podrific or Pod something.
Poddelicious.
Yeah.
Poddelicious.
That's going to be in Nashville. A DC Podfest is another fun one.
Yeah.
That's have you ever, I don't think you've ever been to that one. Have you?
I did not go to it. No.
Yeah. It's another one that's kind of, it's about 150 people probably. And
it's kind of like the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Festival, I would say. It's probably in that.
Yeah, actually very, very much so, except the Podcast Mid-Atlantic is very focused on being creative and thinking outside of the box.
Yeah.
And the DC Podfest is almost, it's weird because you have Podcast Movement, which is pretty huge, and then you have Podfest, which is kind of a smaller version of that that's kind of geared more towards independent podcasters. And then you have DC Podfest, which is kind of a smaller version of Podfest. Again,
and then now there's PodCon too.
Yeah.
PodCon was catering to a completely different set of younger people that were storytelling. It's kind of like this mashup between VidCon, Comic-Con, and podcasting. If you can kind of visualize what that might look like, where young people get involved in podcasting. It was really exciting to actually see that. Todd Cochran and I were there, and in yourself. So
that was a whole different audience.
Yeah.
I was excited just because I know there are little bubbles of podcasters and podcast listeners. And I was just like, I opened up the door and I'm like, and here's one of those. And it was completely, a lot of female, or I think there are more females there than males, or pretty close. And then the whole, what's it called? See, I would call it dressing up in costumes, but that's not the cool phrase.
Yeah. I know. I'm drawing a blank on that word too.
Yeah. Cosplay. There we go.
Cosplay. That's right.
Yes.
Costume play, basically, is what it means. Cosplay.
Yeah. What would you, for somebody who's never been to an event, tips on what to bring or to prepare for attending?
Probably a change of clothes.
Good shoes.
Good shoes. Good socks.
Yeah.
A coat, depending on where you're going, or a bathing suit, depending on where you're going.
That's right. Business cards are definitely in there. Mine just showed up.
They just showed up.
They did. I was like, because I'm going to
my old cards.
Yeah, I'm going to 2 conferences in the span of a month. I was like, I need a lot of business cards. This sounds like a weird one. Chapstick. You'll be amazed because you're talking all the time.
Oh, honey is another one.
Yeah,
bring some honey. Real honey. I mean, if you're a speaker and I don't know how many times, Dave, this happened to you, I'm sure, where you go to the after hours events, right? Yeah. And there's loud music, everybody's talking, and you basically are like screaming to be able to talk. And by the end of the night, you don't have a voice left, and you got to present in the morning. So bring a handful of honey with you, or a little honey bear. That's probably what you'd bring.
Yeah, I've had that happen a couple times. And even I remember last year, Podcast Movement, they had an event, and it was an after party kind of thing. They had broken out 2 rooms. It was a fairly large room, and they purposely had very quiet music because they've heard everybody say, I'm tired of shouting over the music. So it was kind of like your slow jazz in the background. But nonetheless, you still had a couple hundred people in a room, and just the sound of the murmur. The whole as everybody's talking. So you're like, so tell me about and by the end of the night, I know, I think it was a couple of years ago, I came home from Podcast Movement and I sounded like Barry White. I still had a voice, but I'm just, all right, this is Dave Jackson. I'm going to die. Everything else was just blown out because for me, I'm talking all day, as Rob is, we're at a booth saying the same thing over and over and over, which is
there's some variability there.
Yeah.
A little bit of variability. I kind of have to do that. I'll also go insane. So you have to say things a little differently each time.
And then you talk all day, and then you talk all night. And then the other thing I would say is if you're having a really good conversation in the hallway and you look up and it's like, oh, it's time to go to a session, if you have a package where you're going to get the recordings, stay in the hallway. I've had more things happen in the hallway that I'm glad I stayed. I mean, one of the things that I'm speaking at Social Media Marketing World, probably 4 years ago, I had a hallway moment with Michael Stelzner. It's the first time I ever met him, and probably talked to him for a good half hour, 45 minutes, so that when I saw him again at PodFest and had another conversation, that led him to go, we should probably have that guy speak. So that's definitely something to do. Jason says you can get honey packets from Chick-fil-A. So there you go. You're set to go that way.
And you'll be so sweet too. That's the thing. Everybody will love you.
Yeah. The other thing is with events is don't be afraid. One of the great things about podcast events, you can stand next to anybody and just say, so tell me about your show. Then if they don't have one, they'll say, oh, I don't have one yet, but I want to do one. I'm going to interview business people and get sponsors or whatever the heck the plan is or whatever like that. So there's a lot of new ones coming out. And also if you, another place to check is if you go to meetup.com, there's a lot of times there might be a little local meetup. I run one here in Ohio. If you go to neohiopodcasters.com, it's just through meetup.com. Mm-hmm. And we have maybe 10 people that show up once a month. But it's a good group. It's always a lot of fun. So
I used to do that for years up here in Seattle too. I'd get like anywhere from like 5 to 25 people showing up, depending on. It's fluctuated a lot over the years.
Well, and I always say you never know. My favorite is one of the guys that showed up to that works for the local TV station. Mm-hmm. So they needed a podcast guru, and I got to go on TV because I knew Matt. So that always comes in handy. So if you're doing that, I forget. I think it was E says she's coming to Podcast Movement. So Rob and I got to go see the Liberty Bell and the place where they signed the
Constitution.
And that was interesting because it looked just like the pictures, you know what I mean, in your history books and stuff. And you walk in, you're like, yep, this is it. I'm like, okay.
You can actually touch it.
Yes. We also got a greasy cheesesteak.
Philly cheesesteak.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to do there in Philly, and about every 10 feet you're walking on some sort of cobblestone and it'll say Benjamin Franklin,
did this here.
Yeah. And you're like,
burped here.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it is. It seemed like every 10 feet, it's like, Thomas Edison picked his nose here, and so George Washington, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
there's an arrow pointing to where the booger is still. Yeah,
exactly. it's in glass. It's in, held in their place.
It's lasted all these years.
Yeah. Let's go with a brand new podcaster, since we're talking about new podcast events. If somebody's thinking about getting into podcasts, what do you think is the biggest hurdle that they're hitting, and how do they get over that?
I think just figuring out what show they want to do and how that fits into their skill set and their knowledge base. I think it can be a little bit of a challenge for some people. I do a show about podcasting. I'm not sure that I could come up with another show that I could do other than talking about podcasting. So, I did for many years talk about technology. So I could do a technology show, but technology shows are not that popular anymore. So, doing a podcast about podcasting is about my spectrum right now.
Yeah.
So
didn't you start one about some sort of greenhouse or aquaponic or something?
Yeah, I did. That was just a couple of episodes that I did off of my own personal podcast feed that I did, and I talk about electric cars and stuff like that on that show too. But it gets back to what I was saying. I'm just there's nothing there that will sustain a podcast.
Yeah, I had somebody contact me this week, and they couldn't come up with a name of the show. And if you're really having a hard time, it might be. Doesn't mean it is, but it might be that you haven't kind of narrowed your focus. And they said it was going to be, they're throwing out something like, "What's Up Philly?" And I said, well, I would think that's a show about what's going on locally in Philadelphia. And they're like, well, yeah, but we want to talk about the arts, like the local theater. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And they're like, and we also want to talk about social issues. And I'm like, okay, so what's the name of the show again? And they're like, well, I'm like, I don't know if I get that from the name. And they were explaining the social injustices that are going on. I'm like, okay. And they were talking about theater, and they were actually talking about opera and acting and local. And I'm like, so you need somebody who's a Black Panther that's into opera. I go, I don't know that you're going to find, I said, you might want to narrow that down just a little bit. And I said, because that might be the problem. You're having a hard time coming up with a name is because you've kind of really expanded it out. Yeah. And I said, that doesn't mean you can't do that show, but I'm just saying sometimes you might want to have your audience a little more defined that way. Cause
though I have seen some shows that are focused on a local market, but they basically do the show from more of a national focus, right? So they'll do a show like on food in Miami or something like that, but the show will be about veganism, right?
Right.
So you can kind of cater to the local market at the same time that you maybe can cater to the national audience. Because I think that's one of the struggles with the podcasting, local podcasting, is that it, if you get too narrow with doing a show in Miami or Philadelphia, that you narrow your audience so much that there's not much audience to have. So you need to have kind of like a national topic focus that kind of overrides the theme of the show, but maybe a local angle. Was my thought.
Yeah, I'm with you. Then I think that's what they were going for. They were kind of talk about whatever social issues might be going on in the nation or even the world, and then say, and this is why I've seen examples of this in Philly. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. I said, so that way you're kind of, because I'm with you. You don't want to make it, if you make it too local, on one hand, you have a really rabid, but much smaller audience. You'll have people only from Philly that do that. I was trying to talk a local radio station into to turning their podcast or their radio into a podcast. And it's called The Talk of Akron. And for years, they were just like, podcast what? It's funny. I go to their website and I swear it's made in front page. It's really horrible. And I was laughing this morning because I went out to get some breakfast and I forgot my phone. I don't know about you, but why do you do that? It's like, I have to listen to the radio. So I turned it on, and one of the hosts, they actually were talking about, they were doing, which I thought was stupid. There were some radio station has quit doing their, there's the puppy bowl and the kitten bowl, and I guess there's some station for 20 years has had a babe bowl, and you had, pretty women, and then eventually you narrowed it down to 4 and then 2 and etc. And they've now quit doing that because it's not politically correct. So they were talking about who the attractive radio people were here, and the one woman said, well, there's so-and-so, and they go, well, he just does this stuff on the internet. And somebody said, is that real then? And she said, no. And I thought that's stupid because when I got home, I was listening to the rest of the conversation on the internet, and I was this close to calling them up and saying, they're a podcast that get 1 million downloads in 24 hours. How many listeners do you have? Because they were kind of poo-pooing the internet radio. And I was like,
yeah. Who's real? The one with 1 million listeners, or one that has, maybe 100,000 max, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting, but it's always interesting when I go back and listen to the radio, just how bad it is that they're playing the same songs that they were 10 years ago. And there's really not a lot of improvement there. Yeah. Dave says, since we're talking about new podcasters, are there resources for formats or how to outline the show? Well, the format is that's one of those where there's no rules. What would you say to that, Rob?
Well, I kind of do 2 different ways. I mean, like this show and the show I do with Todd Cochran, the New Media Show, there is no real format. You just start streaming and start talking about whatever comes to mind. And then there's other shows like I do, like the Spreaker Live show, that I have an outline and I do prep and I do research and I come up with topics and themes. So I think it can go the full spectrum. I think it really gets back to what kind of show you want to have, how capable you are to hold an audience and communicate ideas and things depending on the format of the program. So like you said, Dave, it can go the full spectrum. It's really what you want to do. There is no ideal format, but it needs to be something you can sustain and do over the long term. Because I mean, if you create a show that's so difficult to produce, you may find that 5 or 6 episodes in, you're just burned out and you maybe run out of things to talk about. So it needs to be something that you can sustain.
Yeah. And okay. I love that. Every time Rob gets done talking, he just goes back and fixes it. Yeah. Something else. I heard a great quote from Natalie Ekdahl. She does the Biz Chicks with an X. So it's Biz CHIX. And she said, because she did 2 years of interviews and then started doing solo shows. And she said what she found was doing interviews grows your network. Doing solo shows, for her case, grew her business. Because it positioned, she said, doing interviews doesn't really position you as the expert. She goes, but when I started doing solo shows and explaining how I was helping my clients, and through all this, it's always delivering value. And I was like, ooh, I like that line. Doing interviews grows your network. Doing solo shows grows your business, or at least your connection with your audience. Yeah. And so you can do a mix of both. I saw Mike Dell from Blueberry yesterday. On occasion, he will throw these out. It's a podcast PSA. And he said, just for the record, you don't have to do an interview show. Because I've heard people say, wait, you don't have to do an interview show? And I'm like, no, you can actually just talk into a microphone like somebody sitting across the room from you. So, but in terms of formats, I don't know if there are any resources, because it is kind of just like Rob said. I know some people that will write out the show. Like they'll actually write out every word they're going to say. If you do that, I just always recommend write like you talk. Don't worry about punctuation. Just write like you hear it in your head, because we don't write like we talk and we don't talk like we write. And then I know other people that just turn on like today, I know I wanted to ask Rob about Voxnest, and I have some things written down that some places we could go, but a lot of today was just like, look at the chat room and talk about what they want to talk about. So it's a little open-ended. And that's where some people talk about finding your voice. And that's where if you just record a couple and you're like, oh, this seems to flow better if I do this or that. And like Rob said, I
also find, Dave, that even creating an outline for your show can be helpful, but I would say probably 70% of the time, I go off that outline. I don't, I mean, it just helps you kind of organize your thoughts is what it does more than anything else. I mean, because if you think about my outline compared to my show, typically, it's pretty close in the alignment of where things happen and where things I talk about. But what's written in the outline isn't always aligned with what I say on the show. But most of the time it does. But it just gives you some outline, so you can think about more what you want to say than having to think about what you want to say in a certain structure. So it kind of removes this kind of other thoughts that you have to have in your head when you're doing a show, and really focus on the content. I think is what you're trying to accomplish with an outline, is you're trying to just streamline that thought process.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, Rob, we're at 60 minutes. I know you and Todd go like 90 minutes, I think it is, over at the New Media Show. But we call it Quits After an Hour. If you want to stick around, I realize you have to go get ready for, I don't know what you do to get ready for Todd.
I do nothing.
Because we usually sit around and do what we call post show till noon, but I realize that's when you start with Todd. So I don't know if you want to hang around for a little bit.
If you want to keep going, sure, we can keep going.
And so it's going to sound weird. It's going to sound like we're ending the show, but technically we're not. So it's one of those things, and that's where if you're an awesome supporter at AskThePodcastCoach.com/awesome, you actually get access to the post show. Or you just show up live every Saturday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. Rob, thanks for getting out of bed this morning. I realize it's only 7:30 where you're at.
Oh, always great to join you, Dave.
You can find Rob at robgreenlee.com, SpreakerLiveshow.com. What else am I missing?
NewMediaShow.com.
Yeah, that's a great show, by the way. That's one that when I see it come down the pike, I'm like, my favorite thing to hear Todd Cochran say is, I probably shouldn't say this, because you know what's coming after that is awesome.
It's golden. Yes.
Golden. Yes. And you guys are a great example of, well, number one, both of you guys have such a wide knowledge of the space, but Todd's a little, at times, what's the good adjective here? he's a little bit of a pistol, and you're like the ultimate, just like Rob's always just chilling,
smooth,
smooth
and calm.
That's it. So
no feathers ruffled. Yep.
All right. So thanks to the chat room again. Stick around. We'll do a little post show, but we're here every Saturday at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. Thanks so much. This is where I need my producer to do all the sliders for me and all that other stuff.
Yes.
So, but
you're
that's
a
half
podcaster. You're a podcaster. You don't have a producer. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun thing with if I looked at my software, I'm sure it's not doing what I think it's going to do. It might. This thing has so many outs with this mixer that in theory I should be able to go in and say, put the iPad on channel 3, put me on channel 2, put Rob on channel 1. It's one of those things you have to play with your gear, and I just haven't had enough time to really play with this thing yet to really get it to do what I'm doing. I'm just happy that I look over and I see it's still recording, so I've got that recording, and we're also on Mixler.com. I always throw that out there, and then I'm on YouTube. So one of these recordings should be something I can use.
Yeah.
So that's always fun. I had a question about the your software is just called Spreaker Studio?
Yeah. As far as the client software, yeah, for Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android, yeah.
Because I know you use that to record the Spreaker live show. Mm-hmm. Do you have to be on Spreaker to use that software?
No, you don't.
Because I was going to say that there's
just
probably
sign up for a free account, and you can use it to record or produce your show, bring in Skype calls. No, you don't have to have a paid account, but you do have to have should have a free account. Yeah. I mean, at least.
Because there's so many, especially on a PC, there's so many like, oh, what should I use to record? And I've never been a big fan of Pamela. I can never get that software to work.
Yeah.
And there's a free software that I've been using, and it just dawned on me. I'm like, you know what I should be using? Because I played with it before in the past, and it was always fine. You've got cool ways to mix in stuff. And I'm like, I should just be using that instead of making it, because it makes things really simple.
Yeah, and it's free. There's no cost to it. It's a pretty light client too, so it's not going to take a lot of resources to get it. It's at Spreaker.com/download is where you go to get that.
Nice. Yeah, that's I just thought about that. I'm like, we should probably talk about that. For nothing else, it's a fun toy to play with.
It is. I mean, it's got sound effects in it. You can trigger. It's kind of like what you were using there, Dave.
Yeah.
But it's a software-based thing, so you can just use your mouse to touch points in there to play intros, exits, sound effects. If you have any pre-recorded interviews, you just activate them right on the software screen. Plus, it has an area that you can hear. You can read the chat room. That's, that's commenting while you're doing your show live or pre-recorded. I mean, you're probably not going to have commenting coming in while you're recording, but but to be able to play tracks, you can actually take you can pre-record a show if you want and play it as though it's live. So you can do that as well. So
nice. Roy in the chat room says 15 episodes, never had a problem producing and uploading an episode using Spreaker Studio. So there you go. And I'm sure somebody's going to ask, so I might as well just hold it up. I'm using a thing called iJingle on the iPad. So I've got a ton of things that, and the thing I liked about this, because I've used other ones, you can throw things in Dropbox and then go into here, connect your Dropbox and download the your stuff there, so you can have all sorts of fun little sound effects, and you just got a ton. And for a while, I was really thinking that if I did things live, that it would be easier, and it's not, because if you're in the middle of something and you go to hit a sound effect and it's too loud, well, okay, now you're going to go back in post-production and fix that. And I'm like, well, if you're going to fix it in post-production, why not just do everything in post-production where you get to pick the sound effects and how loud they are and where they come in. So there's pros and cons to each, but it's a neat little program. So
there's Spreaker Studio.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it there for Android.
Nice.
Yeah.
I saw a post in Facebook and I cannot get it to work on my phone yet, but there are rumors, at least with a screenshot, that the podcast app on Apple is now showing episodic artwork. And I realized this morning that I have an update to my iPhone. Maybe that'll be part of the update because I haven't updated yet. But because for years it's completely ignored anything that you upload at the episode level of artwork. And because I went in and switched my artwork, and then I actually at one point deleted the podcast app and then reloaded it. And God bless Apple, they remembered where I left off every time. It was like, oh, he's back. And I was like, no, I want a fresh start. Look at my podcast like I've never seen it. So that might be something you might want to check out. Jason says, what are the benefits of a live show? Well, the biggest one for me is live interaction. Like I just got Jason's question right now. Rob, what do you think of the other benefits of a live show?
Yeah, I'm changing.
He's changing his sound.
I'm back. Yeah. I just don't want to go gargled on us here. Yeah, I think that the big thing with live shows is that it's a different kind of thought process. It's a different kind of juice behind it. There's a different kind of vibe to it. You have to be very focused, but you also, I think you just need to relax. I think what a lot of people do when they do live shows, they get all tense because they get nervous, right? But I think the key to success with live is just relaxing and just being your normal self as much as you can, and just speaking to your audience just like you would if they're sitting across the table from you. And I think that's the key. It's a mental adjustment you have to do. I think a lot of pre-recorded stuff is a little bit more contrived. It comes across as kind of, too much pre-thought went into it. Yeah. And it can come across not as authentic, and you always know you can go in and fix it, right? Where live is you gotta get it right the first time. So there's a little more pressure there, but if you just relax, be yourself, be normal, just talk like you're talking to a guy at Starbucks. I think that's the key to live.
Yeah, I'm with you. There is a juice, and like obviously today we're having some technical issues. You just got to kind of roll with it, and like, all right, now those, depending on what I'll probably do with this episode is at the beginning of it, I'll say, hey, just so you know, Google Hangouts was having some issues, so you will hear some times where Rob gets a little garbled. I'm leaving that in. You can still understand him, but we did what we could, and then the times where anything where Rob was fixing it, if there was a pause, I'll probably go in and pull those out. Todd does not. I know that. Todd just like clips it and uploads it. I'm like, depending on what it is. And that's, again, it goes back to the beauty of podcasting. You get to pick, there's kind of no rules. You can pick whatever you want. And if you want to have an intro and an outro, you can. If you don't, you don't. If you want to edit, you can. If you don't. It's really up to you.
You take the consequences with your choices, but that's how it goes.
That's it. There was somebody this week at Libsyn. They have, I would guess, 20 episodes, of which 4 were marked explicit. And they said, hey, our numbers have gone down. And I said, you're explicit. And I'm like, you just lost China, India, and I think Egypt. I'm not sure on that one. Do you know which countries are?
I'm not sure either, but I know it's most of those that you just mentioned.
Yeah. And I said, now, and I went back and looked. For me, that's a third of my audience comes from those countries. And I'm like, is it really that important to drop the F-bomb? And again, it's your call, but you also then get those consequences. Whereas if you just bleeped them out, you could say your show's clean. So,
and it's kind of cool to add a little bleep, I mean, how many TV shows have you seen where they've done that, right?
Yeah.
They go, woohoo.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a lot of that on regular TV. I was watching, what was I going? Superstore is this interesting comedy. It's supposed to be like Walmart, and I worked in retail for a while. So I was like, all right, let's turn this on. And they said the S word, but they bleeped it out. And I was like, well, that's kind of an interesting little twist on network television at whatever, 9 o'clock or whatever. So that'll be interesting. And of course, tomorrow's the big Super Bowl. So we'll be interested to see if Justin Timberlake can do something that gets everybody banned again. That'll be, I was surprised. I'm like, wait, we're going to let the guy that had Boobgate, like come back to the halftime show?
Yeah.
We should
I mean, it probably helped his career to have a wardrobe malfunction with Janet Jackson. Yeah,
that's true. But yeah, in the end, you can kind of do whatever you want, and it's just a matter of one of my favorite shows to watch is The Prophet. It's on I think it's CNBC.
CNBC, yeah, I've watched it before. Yeah.
And the guy, a lot of times, if they're working on a new product, they will create a focus group. And if you could it's easier said than done, but if you could get a group of listeners to then listen to your show and then talk about it like you're not in the room, that would be a great thing to have. I actually one time thought about, I think I owned the domain Podcast Focus Group, and I was going to try to have listeners sign up, and then somebody could say, hey, my show is about NASCAR. I need somebody to tell me what you think. And then I could go to my listeners and say, okay, Jim and Joan and Becky like NASCAR. Here, you listen to the show and give feedback. But when I looked at the just the make of doing that and how it would work, and asking for people's time, and it's like this is you're gonna have to charge people for this, and then it gets sticky, and then everybody wants their opinion for free, and it's like, so if you can just find your audience to say, hey, can you tell me what it is? That's the way to go. But that's why I was surprised. I had somebody this morning in Facebook. They've recorded 15 shows, and they're getting ready to launch their show. And I was like, what if you find out in episode 4 that you're doing this lightning round, and everybody hates the lightning round? You have 8 more shows of the lightning round at the 5-minute mark. I'm like, I don't know if I would record that many ahead of time.
Oh, you're talking about recording ahead of time. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, they had 15 shows.
And they record ahead of,
yeah. Plus, I think you and Todd talked about this. There's now pre-fading, which is where you quit before you even release an episode.
That's right.
I was like, just get it out there. Somebody asked me this morning, like, what's the first step? And I go, just start. I said, just start, because no matter what you do, when you get to episode 10, you're going to look at episode 1 and go,
what the heck was that?
Yeah. So, just start. Do you have any itches to start any new podcasts? I know we kind of talked about this earlier.
I'm probably going to be starting a new podcast with Jay Soderberg. I think he and I are going to do a show together. I think
nice.
Something related to Voxnest, I think. So
that'll be good. You guys are a good team.
Thank you.
When he was filling in for Alex, not to the point that I was like, oh, let's just fire Alex, but I was like, it's a different dynamic. And again, Jay brings a different background.
He does
with a different thing. So it's
a little bit of an East Coast humor too.
Yeah.
To the show, that's a little bit of a different twist.
Yeah.
I tried to upstage him with my humor, and it didn't work. So, I want to play the straight man going forward.
There you go. Well, that'll work. Well, that'll be fun. Any idea what you're going to call that one, or?
I don't know. We haven't really come up with a name yet. It's going to be something weird, because that's Jay's going to have his stamp on it. It's going to have something to do with pod vadering or something like that.
Vaderlicious or
Vaderlicious, Vade Nest, Vad Nest. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Did you guys have any other names besides was like Voxnest the one and only name, or did you have other ones that you were going through?
Well, that name actually came from Block Talk Radio. So this Voxnest product was actually a product that Block Talk Radio has been working on for the last year. And so when we merged with them, we just kind of took it over and kind of made it what we wanted it to be here over the last 6 months or so, 4 or 5 months. And that's where it came from. This product didn't come from Spreaker. It came from Block Talk Radio. So, and it really is focused on, more commercial podcasting, larger scale podcasting, and dynamic ad insertion, which is something that Spreaker didn't really have much of.
Yeah. Jason said, if you've never done a podcast, just start. Would you give that same advice to podcasters who've already had a show or two? What I hate to see for me, and then I'll let Rob take a crack. I just hate to see people who are brainstorming about coming up with a plan that they might then there's just like 37 levels of planning and they never launch.
Yeah.
So that's the one.
That's the whole pre-fading.
Yeah.
Right. Is that you just, you get yourself in a quagmire that you never get out of, or you pre-record some episodes and you don't like them, or you're really scared of putting them out there because you're not happy with them and you think it's going to be a failure before you've even started. So I think it's a psychological battle that people have to get over in order to start a podcast.
Yeah. Roy says, what does Blog Talk Radio bring to Spreaker?
Really, the monetization engine, which is something that we didn't have at Spreaker, and that's primarily kind of campaign trafficking software into dynamic ad insertion capabilities. So I think that was the big thing. But Blog Talk Radio and Spreaker were very similar in many ways because they focused on doing live shows. The whole telephony side or phone call-in thing isn't something that we're going to see come to Spreaker.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, that's not going to make the jump to the new platform. So we're going to stay focused on what we do well.
Yeah, because I know Andy was working on that. Andy Toe was working on that technology for a long time. It could never quite, from understanding, never quite get it where they wanted it to be. So I was going to say, is that something that's going to be?
Yeah, cell phone quality is, yes. I mean, the problem is cell phone quality is so bad now that you can't really use it as a way to bring in callers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, or hosts. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So plus you guys have, Spreaker's a pretty, I mean, obviously you're in Seattle, but Spreaker is one of those companies that you have people in Italy. You're kind of spread throughout a little more Europe than I think other companies.
Well, now our main headquarters is now in New York City.
Okay.
So that's where our CEO is located. Many of the team members from Blog Talk Radio were located up in the Northeast. So we're now, I think now we're more considered to be a U.S. company now.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be another change. So
yep.
Awesome. All right. What time you got to leave to go play with Todd?
Probably in the next 5 minutes or so, probably.
I was going to say, because I realize we're coming up on time. Thanks to the chat room. You guys are always awesome. We will not be here next week. I should mention that because I'll be in Florida. Rob's going to be in Florida.
I won't be here next week either.
Yeah. But we will be back the next week. And then I think the way it's going to work as I look at the calendar here. We won't be here next week. We'll be here the 17th and the 24th, but I won't be back on the 3rd because I'll still be coming back from San Diego at that point. But that'll be fun. Plus it'll be interesting to see. I doubt it because I am my middle name is Burn Peel. So if I get anywhere near Sunshine it's always like somebody's like, oh, you're going to come back from San Diego all tan. I'm like, no, that's just not something that happens with me. I don't, it'd be nice to do that. Somebody says,
it sounds like a comedy act, Dave. Burn and Peel.
Yes, it does. Remember them? They started in vaudeville. Here we are. It's Burn and Peel, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guitar player here says, I'm off to Chick-fil-A to stock up on honey packets. Yes, Jason, thinking about SiteGround, I have nothing but good news to say about SiteGround, which I realize everybody goes, Dave, do you realize Libsyn just bought a podcast hosting company and you're not recommending them? I don't know anything about pair.com. I need to go over and probably smell and, kick the tires on them. But when I moved, I've used HostGator. I've never had any good luck with Bluehost. My site was slow. Their support was slower. HostGator I was huge on for years. Loved their support, never had any problems. And then they went to the point where, and really most hosting companies just make my site work. And then it's when you do contact support, is there any problem? And it just got to be where I'd go to their live chat and I'd be waiting for 20 minutes. SiteGround has been just, my website is lickety split on that bad boy. When I moved and I was on WP Engine, which is this WordPress specific hosting company, paying anywhere from $40 to $70 a month for my hosting. Wow. And I talked to SiteGround and I knew a few people who had said, you ought to check these guys out. They're really, really good. And I said, it's a big website. I got to move it over. I get a fair amount of traffic. And it's usually when somebody says things are faster to the actual naked eye, it's like, and this was like, I went to the website, went refresh. It was like, bam. And I was like, ooh, that is faster. So far I love them, and their tech support has been great. I haven't really had to do anything with them. I had I just kind of redid the School of Podcasting's website, and they have this cool, and a lot of hosts do this, where you kind of have a staging site. It's like a backstage version of your podcast. So I added this new theme and updated all these images. And then when I went to push it live, there was a little burp. It was like, can't do it, because they make a backup of your website before they push it, so that in the event something goes wrong, you can go back to your original website. And for whatever reason, that button wasn't working. And so I went to their tech support, had a person live within about 40 seconds. I said, hey, this doesn't work. They went over and tried it, and they said, yep, you're right, that's not working. We're going to escalate the ticket. And within 15 minutes, my website was live. So I have nothing but good things to say about SiteGround at this point. So
that's great.
Yeah. So
you're always out there kicking the tires of all these different new companies, aren't you?
I do. I want to get out of that game, because I'm spending hours going, yep, just what I thought. You stink.
Didn't work.
Yeah. So I don't mind, like, do you know Colin Gray? He's from Scotland.
I do know Colin Gray. Yeah.
Colin has a new tool coming out that's going to be, it looks like you put parts of your, like my intro, my outro, you record the middle, and it puts it together for you. I've yet to even sniff it, but he sent me a link to go try it. That I don't mind. I'm tired of testing podcast media hosts, because I've got my 4, Libsyn, Blueberry, Spreaker, and Podbean. Pick one of those, but all these other ones, I'm like, no, because do we need 37 different media hosts? No,
probably not. No.
And I'm always kind of wondering, like, why would you even start one?
Yeah.
At this point, like, but I guess they figure if I can get a crumb of this big pie, but I just like, for me, there's always Anchor too, right? Oh my goodness. I hate having to tell people the bad news when they go, I want to move from Anchor. And I'm like, well, for this to really work, you need to get Anchor to do a redirect. And from what I've seen, they don't.
Yeah.
So you're starting over.
They don't want you to leave.
No. And the same thing with Podomatic. Podomatic you can, but you have to pay. So if you're a free person, you have to upgrade. And what's interesting about Podomatic is when you go to upgrade, their page shows the yearly pricing. And you have to kind of hunt around to go, no, I just need to upgrade for 1 month so I can put in my redirect, have it go through, and then cancel my account. So it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, they're not, I'm like, okay, that's not the nicest,
No, it's not. It's not a smart business practice. Yeah. It's just going to piss people off.
All right. Well, Rob, you've gone squirrely again. So I think it's a good time we're just going to hang it up. Actually, you're fine now. It's weird.
What?
Nope. Now you're back. Because your laugh was fine, and now you're not. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
but go ahead. I will go watch you and Todd. And thanks again for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on, Dave. And we'll see you down in Orlando, down in the sunny citrus country.
Yes. So, and chat room, I will see you in 2 weeks. So take care, everybody. See ya.